everyone. Welcome to the webinar, Employment Readiness, Strategies and Assessments. Thanks for being here. My name is Maddie Goldstein. I'm the Program Assistant at the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans, and together with our partners from Advocates for Human Potential, we make up the National Veterans Technical Assistance Center. Before we get underway with the webinar, I'd like to go over a few logistics. This webinar is being recorded and will be available for you to access about 24 hours after it's over. You can communicate with me if you're having technical difficulties through the chat box or through my email. You can find my email on the registration confirmation email. All participant lines are muted, so you'll be unable to ask questions by phone. On the GoToWebinar dashboard, there is a tab that says Questions, where you can ask your questions, and we will leave time at the end for Q&A. So feel free to submit your questions as they come up during the webinar, and we'll have access to all of them at the end. You'll also see on the dashboard we have some handouts available. They'll be linked for you to access anytime after the webinar is over on nchv.com and nvtech.org. After the webinar, you will receive an email with a link to the recording and the post-webinar survey. This survey will pop up at the end of the webinar today, and we'd appreciate it if you took a minute to complete the survey to help inform us so we can continue to bring you the voices and information relevant to your work with veterans. Today's guest will be Nick Bassett of Goodwill Industries in Houston, and it will be facilitated by Ian Leisman from Advocates for Human Potential. Before we get started, we'd like to start off with a few poll questions to get a sense of you all in the audience. So I have them up on the slides right now. And we'll start with this one. We were wondering what type of providers were in the audience. So if you'd all just want to take a few seconds and answer what your role in your organization is. So it looks like we're tied between a top 4 employment specialists, case managers, and program staff, managers, directors, and coordinators. We have, how long has your organization been an HPRP grantee? Not everyone on this webinar today is an HPRP grantee, a lot of them, so we wanted to get us a range. So it looks like this question's not applicable to about half, and the rest have had it for a range also, some 3 to 4 years, some 4+. Last question, how experienced are you as a provider in HPRP? If you're new to the organization. So for this, it either looks like people are from 0 to 2 years, or this question's not applicable. Okay. Thank you all for taking a few minutes to answer those. It helps us interact, get a sense of who's on the call. So I'm going to turn it over to Ian soon, but first I'd like to just take a minute to introduce our guest. Nick Bassett is a former captain in the U.S. Marine Corps and is now managing the Veteran Service Job Connection Center for Goodwill Industries of Houston. The Veteran Services Program serves approximately 1,800 veterans annually with a dedicated staff of 22 full-time employees in 5 programs to assist veterans with employment and permanent housing. During his career in the military, Nicholas led and commanded Marines in overseas deployments that included Iraq, Afghanistan, and various locations in Southeast Asia. Ian, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi, and thank you so much. And again, I'm Ian Leisman with the National Veterans Technical Assistance Center. So today we're gonna talk about job readiness. And before we dive into it, I thought we'd just have a couple slides here that show what DOLVAC's Department of Labor, Veterans Employment Training Services is asking of us as grantees. So as you can see here, and I'm not going to read it, but you know, it does talk about employment services, workshops, job counseling, assessment of skills, resume writing, interviewing skills, and these are all things that are intricately related to job readiness. And okay, there we go. So to continue on, the grantee will be responsible for referring participants to supportive services. Again, basic skills, remedial education activities, life skills, and money management training. And we'll see as we move forward how this how this lines up with the concept of job readiness. The grantee will be responsible for referring to additional job skills and training services, classroom training, OJT, occupational skills training, apprenticeship, licensing, and again, these are all elements of job readiness. This is going to help the client, help the veteran see where they are in terms of the skills that they're going to need to be a competitive, candidate for work. So this is just to kind of keep in the back of our mind as we're moving forward about what Dole Vets is asking of us as grantees and how that ties in with job readiness. So why do we care about job readiness? As we all know, those of us that are operating and working in HPRP grants, that getting our clients ready for work and then getting them a job is one of the key functions that we serve. And for those of us that aren't in HPRP programs, proper, but are in the field of helping veterans, it's the same thing. Job readiness is really going to, help your program be successful, but more importantly, it's going to help the veteran be successful, and that's the name of the game. And feel free to chime in if you guys have ideas about this, about what you think about job readiness. But some of the bigger issues is, if we have a workforce that lines up with, the job market, what the needs are, what employers need is changing. There's a shifting job market, and so when we're thinking about job readiness, part of what we're doing is looking at where do our veteran skills match up. What skills do they have that will lend themselves to a changing job market. And like I said, you can see on this slide, it's got several other considerations about why we as a program or we as service providers care about this. But also, there's some other broader considerations as well.
Ian, if I could just jump in for a second while you switch slides, for those who
Sure.
Who said it's not applicable, HPRP stands for the Homeless Veterans Reintegration Program, and it is a grant of the U.S. Department of Labor, and more information on it can be found in the follow-up email.
Thanks for that, Maddie. Yeah, and we do have a broader audience today. So, and again, this is geared towards people working with homeless veterans in a lot of different capacities. Even if you're in a housing type program or another social service type program, a lot of this stuff can apply because, as we know, the majority of our veterans that have experienced homelessness or are currently experiencing homelessness, there's an economic factor there. And so helping veterans get back to work or get back into the workforce, particularly if they've been incarcerated or if they've been chronically homeless and out of the work environment for a long time, we're going to need to help them kind of get up to speed. And so what is job readiness? It's a very broad concept. We've done research in the past and we've tried to put together some standards, but there are no generally accepted standards. For the purposes of what we're going to be looking at today, there's kind of like you start from the very top and work yourself deeper. The very level one is legality. Can they legally work? What does that mean? Well, you need ID, Social Security card, things like that. If they have restrictions because of their criminal background or other restrictions on their types of work they can have, those are all considerations. Level two is a little bit deeper. Can they show up? Can they present themselves? Have they been coached? This is where we kind of come in, after we kind of make sure that they have their documents. And as we know, some of our veterans don't have those documents, so we'll have to help them get their ID or their Social Security card or even their birth certificate. So that's kind of some of the pre-enrollment stuff that we do at HPRP to help them get job ready. But once we get all that legal, stuff, the basics, that's when we kind of look a little deeper. And, if they're not showing up for, if we set an appointment and they're tardy or they just miss the appointment, that's something that we can look at and say, okay, can this veteran, they've been out of the workforce for a while, or they have some other issues that they may need to address before they can get into the readiness level where they're saying, hey, I'm showing up, I'm sober, I'm cleaned up, I'm ready to go. And so a lot of times we as service providers can, set some measures and have some appointments and some things before we're sending them out there into the, field to look for work. We can see, are they receptive? Can we give them some general pointers, and are they showing up in clean, appropriate clothing, just the basic things like that. And then level 3 is a deeper kind of brush, and this is where the veterans can surprise us. If a veteran comes in and they've got, they say, hey, I want to be, I want to be a professional football player. That may not be a reasonable goal, but that said, we can look and say, maybe they have some interest in the sports field, and maybe we can kind of show them, work with a local, a sports stadium or service provider. So those are the kind of things where, we can make an assessment as professionals, look at them and say, hey, this person's showing up intoxicated, to our meetings. They're probably not going to, do a very good job on an interview. If they're very combative or other things, these are some of the things that we can make a professional assessment of as we kind of assess the client, interview the client, and get the client into place. There it goes. Okay. So, this is a big question. Can we predict? This is what I said in the last slide. Sometimes clients surprise us. And if you've done this work for a while, you probably know it's happened to you, where you've seen a lot of different clients, and sometimes clients come in and they're really out of touch. They haven't worked for a long time. They've got a lot of barriers, and you just think to yourself, wow, this client, is really going to have a hard time, or they're not going to be able to get a job. And guess what? Those clients sometimes surprise us, and so we always have to give them the benefit of the doubt. The other side of that coin is a client comes in, they don't really have that many problems, that many barriers. The resume looks decent. They present themselves pretty well, but for whatever reason, maybe it's they have a really negative attitude, or they don't, there's other things that are hidden in there. So even though, we might think, hey, this guy looks good on paper, this veteran looks like they're ready to go, and they totally blow the interview, or they don't show up for the interview. So predicting whether or not an individual is job ready at a deeper level, that is something that, time and experience definitely lends itself to determining that, but by the same token, clients, surprise us. So, in the slide here, you can see it says there's no, there's no evidence and research to support and predict that. So there is a kind of unpredictable factor in there, which is, that's fine. That's why we do the work that we do, because our experience lends itself, and we can kind of see patterns. Basic skills and behaviors, obviously, they've got to be able to engage, and be reasonable, etc. Some of our clients that we see tend to be confrontational, and so we need to help them move past that and kind of get to a state where they can, kind of engage in a reasonable way and be relatively calm. I mean, everybody has a bad day, so again, there's certain skills that you're going to have regardless of the type of job it is, and we'll talk about those here in a couple slides. Being prepared for competitive employment means that you've got the fundamental abilities to navigate demands such as, and this is the basic stuff, a lot of our programs, we'll have an assessment form that the client fills out. If they can't do simple reading and writing, and again, because we're dealing with veterans here, most of them have those basic skills, but sometimes those skills slip, or sometimes for whatever reason they don't have them. They've got to be able to do some of the basic stuff. Interpersonal skills, this is something we all work on, to try to become better, to interact with other people. But, being able to do some basic math, figuring out how to look things up, for some of our veterans, this is a challenge, and so this is where we can do some assessment, and there's some assessment sheets that we have in here, some little tools, and we'll talk about those towards the end. But these are things where you can ask some questions and have the veteran explain where they're at when it comes to certain things. Measuring soft skills can be somewhat challenging, but you can definitely look at their behavior, look at their work history, and ask them about some of their previous work situations to get a sense of kind of where they're at and where their head's at. So these assessment forms and the assessment process is gonna definitely help us, see what their interests are, see what they've done in the past. This is where we try to find out what they did in the military. A lot of times those military skills that they were trained in can be very helpful, as well as the other type of skills, those soft skills. We need obviously ID, social security cards. We kind of touched on that already as far as the legal requirements to work. And there's also other limitations, whether it's physical limitations, maybe they've got a disability, and this includes, mental illness and behavioral disorders. Maybe they can't be in an enclosed space, or maybe loud noises, really, they can't be around loud noises. So these are where you can also take in those limitations, and this is where it comes up to us as employment specialists and as, case managers and as program people to really think it through and say, hey, if this veteran says he doesn't really work well with the public, with people, let's not try to put him in a customer service job where they're going to be dealing with people. By the same token, if they're, if they have PTSD or other anxiety disorders and loud noises, really throw them out of their, throw them off, then we don't want to put them into a loud, noisy industrial environment. Those are just examples. So we have to kind of analyze and listen to what the veteran is telling us, and then keep that in mind when we're thinking about the kind of jobs that we're going to try to match them up with, to try to give them the best shot. We don't want to set them up for failure. We really want to give them the best opportunity. Obviously, and this goes back to kind of like some of the HPRP 101. For the HPRP is an employment program, so the veteran really can't work. They're fully disabled, or if they're unwilling to work. And again, this is where assessment goes a long way. Back in the day, and those of you that have been doing this work for a long time, HPRP was one of the only veterans programs out there. So a lot of times you would have people come in that weren't really a good fit for HPRP, but we do this kind of work because we want to help people, so it's hard to turn folks away. But I always would tell case managers, and I would tell clients myself, I'd say, hey, this is an employment program. If you're not serious about looking for work, getting a job, and keeping a job, this is not the right program for you. So that's something to always keep in mind. It's a judgment call sometimes, and the way I look at it is we try to be inclusive. Like if they're not, if they miss an appointment or something, or if they're a little flaky, we should give them some chances, but also give them a little bit of coaching and say, hey, if you can't show up for a meeting with us, what are you going to do when you get a real job? They're not going to be as forgiving if you're just no call, no show, or showing up really late every time. So it's a kind of a little reality check we can give our clients sometime. So we look at kind of the next level of job readiness, and this will and Nick will speak to this a little bit too in his portion, where we talk about really developing a plan and thinking about what we're going to do with the client and what the client is going to do. Remember, this is an agreement between the program and the client. So we're going to say, hey, we're going to provide you with X, Y, and Z, whether it's resume assistance, whether it's transportation assistance, whether it's some skills training. We're agreeing as an HPRP or as an employment program to provide these services, but by the same token, the veteran has to agree to show up, to follow through, and then to stay in contact once they do get a job, all those good things. So, as you see here on one of the bullets, the managed personal challenge, and that happens, especially for our veterans that have been out of the workforce for a while and have a lot of barriers. something could throw them off. If they're staying in transitional housing and, they can't get sleep and, all these things come up. So, when we're thinking about how well prepared our job-seeking veterans are, we should need to think about some of their barriers and how those could potentially, affect, the veteran. And again, we have all ranges. We have veterans come in and just need a little nudge in the right direction. And we have other veterans come in and they literally have the shirt on their back and they have to start from square one. So there's a wide range of, where the veteran is coming at, where their head is, what barriers they're facing. And then, we help the veteran kind of think it through. So, we talk about their experiences in the military, what they liked, what they didn't like. There's a lot of other factors here. Their abilities, physical abilities. A lot of times we see veterans that are like me, that are getting older. So you may not want to do a physically demanding, or may not be able to do a physically demanding job. Same thing. If you're trying to start, to do something different than what you did before, this is where we can use various. And we didn't cover these very deep here because there's a lot of different ones to go through, but there are, aptitude tests and vocational tests. Your DevOps and leavers can help you with those, and we do have some of them on the website, which we'll get to a little bit later. Understanding the fundamentals of the local labor market, this is huge. Depending on where you are, there's certain regional issues. I know that the energy industry took a kind of a dive. So a lot of people that wanted to work in the oil fields and things like that, those jobs aren't as available as they once were. And some jobs are going away. As we know, automation is changing the landscape of the workforce. So we're becoming a more service-driven economy. So these are all things that, hey, maybe, this type of job was a viable, occupation at one point, that it may not be so viable. And so we need to understand, what the labor market is demanding. And also we have to look outside of our region, because a lot of times there'll be a skill, but it may not match up with what we have going on locally. But we've all had clients where we can find them a job, maybe in another state, maybe in another county, maybe in another city, and that creates a new set of challenges. But if it's a if it's a good fit, we can make the necessary service connections to help that veteran find that job and keep that job in a different market. And there's all kinds of other things. Another thing, and I won't go too deep into it here, but it's a pay thing, and it happens. We have veterans that have very unrealistic expectations. They may have 10, 15 years ago done a job and gotten a certain level of pay, and then come to find out that this job field is not as lucrative as it once was, and wages have remained flat for the last 20 years. So people think they're going to make more than they are, and so that's just a reality check. So those are all things to think about, to help the veteran think about. Let's see here. Let's go to the next slide. Sorry, my slide's not advancing here. I'm not sure. There we go.
I did it, yeah.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that, folks. All right. So, then that goes along with this next slide here, is the idea of things are a little different. If we've been out of the workforce, even for 5 years, honestly, things have changed. The way that, how we find a job, having basic computer skills, resumes, the way that resumes look at, and that's a whole, we could do a whole webinar on resumes, the idea of, if they have gaps of employment due to just not having a job or being incarcerated or other things, moving to a skills-based resume, trying to keep resumes down to one page. Cover letters are huge, and this is all stuff where we can help the veteran to jump in and, think about, tailoring a cover letter, references, thank you letters, and these are all things that veterans really need to think through and need some assistance with. Soft skills, this is your basic communication skills. This is your interaction with each other, body language, all these stuff. Organizational skills, just time, basic time management. How to, anger management, how to reduce our stress. These are all integral soft skills that, in today's job market, unfortunately, due to the fact that we have so many applicants for every position, it really is challenging, for the veteran to just getting caught up here, to look at this new landscape. So the interview is key. I always stress this because a lot of times we'll get there, we'll do all the job searching, we'll get a good cover letter, we'll get a good match, we'll get the skills, and the hardest stuff is beyond getting a job offer is the interview. I always say use a different staff member. So if you have multiple staff members, which most of us do, if you're working with a client all the time, guess what? You're going to have a rapport with that client. They're going to feel comfortable with you. So let one of your other staff members, let your admin person or another case manager or somebody else do the actual mock interview. Remember that the decision on whether or not to hire an individual is usually made within the first minute. Like when you walk in and they shake your hand, their body language, they've already kind of decided if you're their person or not. So those first impressions are very key. I always say try to make a personal connection with the interviewer. This doesn't really work well with panel interviews, which are very popular, but if you're doing a one-on-one interview, try to coach your client to find a personal connection, whether it's a picture on the wall of them doing something or sports memorabilia, give them a hard time about their team or comment on, the picture on their wall, or, if you have kids the same age as they have pictures of the kids, say, oh yeah, my niece is that age, it's, they're so crazy, whatever. If you can make that personal connection, those are the kind of things that really tend to stick. And the other thing is to understand that the interview process has changed. It's not the same world as it was even, like I said before, 5 years ago. I mean, situational questions are all the rage. Either they give you a hypothetical situation and say, oh, you see a coworker, doing something improper, or you get in an argument with your shift supervisor, or whatever it may be. Or the other side of that coin is they may ask you a situation, tell me a time when you didn't get along with a coworker. So these kind of situational questions are very, very popular right now. Process questions are also big right now. So, the thing to remind the veteran is that if they've got the interview, the interviewer already knows they can do the job. They know they have the skills. So they've already vetted that veteran, and they say, hey, this person's got the skills. What the interview is saying is, can this person really fit in? Process questions are that too. One of the ones they'll say, how many ping pong balls will fit in this room? And it's not about coming up with the right answer. It's about kind of explaining how you would solve that problem. And like I said, does this person fit into our culture? That's a big thing. Another caveat here is the illegal questions thing. So state and federal laws make discrimination based on certain protected categories, such as national origin, citizenship, age, marital status, disabilities, arrest, and conviction record, military discharge status, race, gender, and pregnancy status. So those are all stuff, but guess what? Employers ask those kind of things all the time. Sometimes, most of the times I would assume they just don't even know they're not allowed to ask those questions. When did you graduate from high school? Things that are related to your age. If you say, hey, I graduated in the 80s or 70s or whatever, that's going to automatically age you. Asking questions about your significant other, ask you, do you practice Rosh Hashanah or whatever? Do you practice, all these things? Do you practice Ramadan? These are religious-based questions that are illegal. So how do you, if you're asked one of these questions, how do you respond? And so there's no easy answer. I would coach my veteran clients to say, hey, either, answer in a way that doesn't, discriminate, or just say I'm not comfortable answering that, in the worst case, or, show something that goes beyond that. Well, I've been doing a lot of, a lot of things, and try to pivot on the question a little bit if it's something. And a lot of times, you can answer it, but just be aware that technically speaking, they're not supposed to be asking you those questions. I'm just taking a look at the time here. It looks like we're on track. Job readiness, the proficiencies. These are some of the things that we as providers can do classroom training. We can also do one-on-one training. Some of the things are things that HPRPs are directly, required to do as part of their grant. Other things are more informal. Basic computer skills, that's essential. If they can't manage a personal email account, or if they can't go and do an online application, it's going to be really, I would say, almost impossible. Same thing with social media. Having basic social media skills and understanding mobile devices, which isn't on this list. I was in a conference last year, and they made a statement with somebody from I can't remember, it was somebody from a state agency, and they said that they heard us, they heard someone make a statement that kind of rang true, that not being able to use a mobile platform, not being able to use social media and basic computers is the same thing as not being able to read or write was 20, 30 years ago. So if you don't have the basics on some of these things, you're essentially illiterate in the modern world. So we can do a lot of things. We can have labs, and we can have basic courses. A lot of times our American Job Centers and Workforce Centers will offer basic classes. And we can even sit down with the client if we have time, when we have time. But, it's true, like we can sit down and say, hey, here's how here's some basics, and just set them down in a lab and just let them kind of learn at their own pace. And they'll be surprised it's not as daunting as they think it is. Job skills and certifications, those are another thing. When folks come out of the military, they've got, they may have done a job in the military, but because of state requirements, they're not certified, whether it's commercial driver's license, EMT and medical certifications fall in this category, and forklift drivers and other things. So, just because they know the job doesn't mean they can get the job, because many jobs will need that certification, and that's, again, where we can come in and actually provide those, access to those licensing and certification skills. And, there we go. So, on the job, this is something that, as part of job readiness, we need to think about how they're going to be. If we don't set up our veteran at the mindset of what's going to be expected of them, they're not going to be able to, even though they get the job, they won't be able to keep the job. And so that's going to put us right back to square one, which is no good. That means we're spinning our wheels. That means we're sending to the veteran to not be in a good environment and not understand what's going to be expected from them. So, work etiquette is kind of general social expectations of behavior in the workplace. One person put it as to respect and protect time, people, and processes. There's no kind of universal catch-all agreement, and it does vary from work environment. So what you can get away with in the warehouse is not necessarily what you can get away with in the call center. So depending on the type of work environment it is, the type of job it is, work etiquette does vary widely. Same thing with dress and grooming. I mean, most industries, basic hygiene is going to be pretty much standard. If you're working out a roughneck on an oil rig, or if you're long distance trucker, or you're working in a, pipe fitting or welder, yeah, you're going to get dirty. But, you have to have the appropriate clothing. Same thing with a professional work casual environment. Are jeans okay or not? All these things really vary, and they change. What was considered business casual 10 years ago is now considered just straight business. Professionalism, that's all the stuff, being polite, being respectful to your, to your managers and to your coworkers and to the clients and to your customers. You know, everyone has a bad day, but, you know, a lot of times I think we come across veterans that, you know, kind of need to remember that their attitude is a very key thing. And so if they're in a bad mood all the time or they can't deal with their coworkers, that's not gonna go over very well. And so we can coach the veteran. This goes, you know, into a lot of depth in terms of, you know, whether or not if there's gaps in their employment record, you know, if they were incarcerated. You know, some states have banned the box, i.e., but, you know, for a lot of types of jobs, if you have certain types of criminal convictions that disqualifies you for the job. But, you know, if you're staying in transitional housing, if you don't have transportation, you know, things that you did in the military, all these things are stuff that you can coach the veteran to kind of remind the veteran that they're an asset to the employer, that, you know, they are bringing something to the table, and that just because they may be going through recovery or experiencing hard times, that doesn't need to be the centerpiece of, you know, of how they can discuss those things with the potential employer. You know, and always let the veterans know that you're there to help them. So this is this is from our NVTAC website, www.nvtac.org. And some of you might have been on a call earlier today. We did a website orientation, and we had several of them last month or so. And so this is on the website, and this has got a lot of different forms. And like I said, there's a few of them here in PDF form that you can click, and you can copy those and adjust them. You can tweak them. Feel free to take what you want from them to use to add to your existing forms, or to you know, create a new form. And there may be things on there that you don't want. Feel free to take those off. Those, you know, those things are there for you to use, and we're always looking for new examples too. So in the comment section on the website, or to contact us, you can say, hey, I've got a form you guys don't have. I'm willing to share it, you know, with other grantees. That's always a nice thing to do, because we're always learning from each other. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it along to Nick, and then I'll circle back here at the after his section, and hopefully we'll have some time for questions. And of course, Maddie is fielding your questions in the chat box, so if there's burning questions, I'm sure she'll let us know. So without further ado, we'll Mr. Bassett go ahead and show us what he's got.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nick Bassett, manager of Goodwill Services in Houston. Just here, you got invited to kind of share some of our best practices. You know, we're not perfect either, but we do like. We've been doing it HPRP since about 2009, so we've got some institutional knowledge. Definitely willing to share, because it's all about collaboration. So next slide. Let's see. Okay. Just, you know, we have experience with you know, all variants of HPRPs, whether it's the IVTP or the homeless female veterans version. We also have an SSVF or IVTP. We also have an SSVF grant as well in-house, which is nice to have. So we have a kind of, you know, one-stop shop a lot of these programs, as well as some other agency-specific programs. So some of this might apply, some of it might not, but take what you can, and I'll be here to answer some questions as well. So without further ado, let's talk about, you know, kind of a basic intake and assessment that we do, you know, in terms of job readiness. I kind of relate it to that as much as I can. You know, intake obviously is important, so we have multiple programs. Our intake form covers a lot of different programs that we offer. You know, it includes, you know, basic demographics, you know, what their employment and education levels are, military experience, that's a specific section, what their health information is, and any barriers they might present on the form. It gets a little intrusive, as we all know. Some of those forms can get intrusive, but we try to make sure they can do it in private if they need to. So, you know, on top of intake, we have the orientation. We do it every week on Mondays for job-seeking veterans. They come in on Mondays to get oriented to all of our different programs. Primarily, we have housing and employment programs, so SSVF being the housing program. So they come through orientation. get introduced to all the programs, so they might not be aware of all the programs we have. And then we pair them up. We do the ONET assessment as dictated by DOL and whatnot through our computer labs. And then after that's complete, we pair them up if they're seeking housing, we get them screened for that. And then it's the same day, pair them up with an employment specialist who does the individual development plan, which is specific to each client and is based on what they present as their goals. But it's kind of four-part IDP, I'll call it from now on, IDP. The first part, obviously, as you see on the slide, is a job search knowledge evaluation. Do they know do they have knowledge already on how to find a job? Let me pull it up so I can talk intelligently. So, answers questions. For instance, if you have not worked for a long time, it's best to just leave an employment gap on your resume, true or false. So then it's graded by the employment specialist, and it generates a little discussion first time they talk to the employment specialist. The next question is the workplace success evaluation. Kind of those soft skills that Ian was talking about, things that may or may not need to be developed as you work with your veteran. One question being specific: if you overslept and know you're going to be late for work, what should you do? Multiple choice questions, and obviously there's a correct question. The answer is incorrect, and obviously that creates another discussion for the employment specialist and the veteran. And we really try to use a coaching model to kind of bring, why did you answer that way? Type of thing, kind of, open questions to kind of get some more information from the veteran. Part 3, employment skills evaluation with the My Next Move. Most people are probably familiar with that, so I kind of skip through that. And then the financial knowledge is built in as well. Do they know how to budget? Do they know what a credit score is? What is their basic understanding of some of these things? So moving forward, it kind of determines job readiness up front. If they have no, they are answering all these questions, especially the workplace success and job search knowledge evaluations. Miss a lot of those questions, and maybe they're not quite job ready yet. But our kind of line in the sand is: do we think this guy or gal is ready to be it's going to be job ready within 90 days? And that's for all of our employment programs at our agency. Once they're done with the IDP, whichever comes first, either they get screened first or do their IDP first. They won't leave the building without having done both of those if that's what they're seeking for both. So next slide. Okay. So that's what we do on Mondays. They will meet their employment specialist on Monday, get a name with the face and the point of contact. On Tuesday, they're required to come back to do the job readiness training, and we have a Goodwill International curriculum that we utilize across all of our job centers. Next steps being the job readiness skills, talking workplace skills, those soft skills that get people laid off or fired, and then the personal development workshop. What else can I do to get ready for employment? And what else do I need to get ready for employment? Whether it's a new resume, other service providers that we have, things like that. So then following after that, to do the financial literacy, more open class for everyone to listen in and learn some items that they need to start thinking about, because obviously when you come in looking for a job, budgeting and credit scores and things like that, so important to you yet, because you don't have any money potentially. So at least plant the seed early on, and then make sure they understand that we have that financial coaching component going forward, where they can meet with a financial coach, whether through a community partner or on in-house. We have a few financial coaches as well that have been trained. They can do one-on-one coaching, doing workbooks, make sure the budget and credit and all that is good to go going forward, whether they have just landed a job or they just got housed. Now they need to start budgeting, through different various steps throughout their process. Next slide. So one of the main things, for job readiness is that case management piece. Obviously, we can't do everything, so we refer out, for mental health issues to the VA or community partners. We do have housing on site, but if you have an SSVF provider nearby, that's a great resource for it. It has HPRP grants because the eligibility criteria is similar. It's not perfect across the board for every veteran, but generally if they're qualified for SSVF, they're probably qualified for HPRP as well, so you can do that co-enrollment and help them out in that way. Community colleges, getting whether if they have the support structure necessary to get that training, whether it's a few months long or a couple of weeks long or whatever it is, they have that support structure. That's their American Job Centers. Great resource. They do have money that will assist with those higher end trainings for us. I think a couple $1,000s here and there where we can match or contribute to assisting with some of those trainings that are offered throughout the city. And then the local veteran support organizations are huge. In Houston we have tons of them. Might not be in every area, but VSOs, veterans want to hang out with other veterans, and veterans are going to help other veterans. So when you can get them linked in networking opportunities or peer-to-peer counseling, those things that'll help get them ready and get them motivated to be ready for a job, for their work career going forward. So in-house, we do have the SSVF program. It's great to have because it has a housing first model, as most of you probably know, where your first priority is getting shelter over your head, because it's really hard to find a job without those items. We also have financial coaching on site, so one-on-one financial coaching once they land a job or get stably housed. And then we also have quite a few other programs. So we have a youth program, for instance. So if a veteran household comes in presenting with maybe a 19-year-old that's still living with the family or whatever the case may be, we can enroll them in that youth services program and help them out, get income through multiple venues to get them stable and sustained. Next slide. So another thing that's really beneficial is being able to host job fairs if your facility can support that. Job fairs are great. It's great for networking with employers, and getting the veterans in and getting your name out too as a employment service agency. What we like to do quite often is coincide it with a job readiness workshop the day prior. I'm sure many of you have seen that model before, where you do the mock interviews ahead of time. Like Ian was saying, you want that mock interview to be with someone else, not your employment specialist necessarily. And what we like to do is we have a business advisory council that volunteers their time to help us out with those things. So it's members throughout the city that work in certain industries, target industries really, that will help out and do mock interviews with our veterans or other clients throughout Goodwill, where they get a different face and different perspective on the mock interview piece. So get some volunteers to help out with that, other veterans, other volunteers, everyone, businesses, consulting firms, whatever the case is, they like to volunteer their time. And like Ian says, or other staff, if that's the only option. And then, during that job readiness workshop, have that opportunity for those veterans that are going to that job fair the next day apply online the day prior to those job positions, because every time you have a job fair, veteran shows up and looks nice, has his resume, and then they give them a website and say, hey, apply online, and we'll be in touch. So having them already apply online, we'll move it along a little quicker. We like to make our job fairs exclusive to our clients. Sometimes we'll do a large job fair that's open to all veterans or all general populace, really just going to get our name out and bring in additional veterans that might need assistance or other clients. So that's what the big ones are for. You see on the slide there. And then small job fair is really targeting, that client pool. What's your client pool look like? Are they looking for warehousing or forklift type jobs, or medical jobs, or whatever the case is? So you have that pool ready to go, and you can kind of design that small job fair to fit the needs of your client pool. And I personally like to try to find veteran-owned businesses if possible. They're more willing to take a chance on a veteran that might have a background, for instance, or just a veteran that's just really transitioned to take them on board. Or those small mom and pops, for veterans that aren't comfortable with the online application process, the small mom and pop companies, and businesses might have a more traditional application process. Another thing we like to do is we have a small wardrobe available for job fairs. One time we had a pretty large job fair, and we had one of our veterans volunteer to kind of basically screen the attire, the Marine, screen the attire of the veterans coming in. So a veteran comes in with T-shirt and ripped jeans or whatever the case may be. We had some wardrobe available through donations. You say, hey man, let me get you a button-down shirt to put over top of that, and here's a tie. Here's a jacket too to cover all that up. And that was outside of view of the employers, so they could present as a more polished candidate. So that's pretty cool to see. But that's another practice that you potentially take a look at if you have the donations and capability there. So next slide. So, as HPRP grantees or other grantees, you have the ability to provide supportive services, vocational training, OJT, things like that. So, Houston's a huge city, so transportation is a big deal, and that's a big deal for job readiness. So if they might not be job ready to take a job out in the sticks because they can't get there, they don't have a car, but there might be a job posting that's on the bus line. We can provide some Metro cards or whatever the case may be for that job. So then, that job readiness thing is taken care of, that barrier is taken care of. Support services with occupational clothing and tools once they get an offer letter or whatever the case may be. Voc training, we want to make sure it's aligned with the stated goals that's in the IDP, the individual development plan. If it's not, that's a discussion that's got to be had between the employment specialist and the veteran, whether it's a realistic goal, or they're just trying to find, you got those guys that really just go around trying to get certifications, whatever it is, they just want it. But if it's not aligned to their goals, then it doesn't make sense for them to go for that unless they have a realistic reason or reason to change their career path or whatever the case would be. Credentials and the TWIC card's a big deal here with the port we have nearby. Obviously forklift, and we need like barber's license for kind of self-employment as well. The other thing that's great, HPRP grantees, if you built it into your grant, is the wage subsidy and OJT component. This has been great for those that have clients, veterans that backgrounds, kind of a win-win for both the employer and the veteran and us, in that if you have a host site that's willing to take on this OJT, the grant can pay for a portion of that up to, I don't want to say because I'm wrong, but a few weeks at a time, you can do the OJT, and we have a temporary services program at Goodwill that we can assist with in that regard to do the payroll, so the company doesn't have to worry about the payroll. They just send the timesheet in, and then the client gets paid. So that's good. Good thing for a veteran that's been recently incarcerated, has no recent work experience. They can get that work experience, put that on the resume, or even that host site might hire them at the end of the OJT. So that's pretty awesome. So definitely look at that, on your next applications or renewals to build into that. The OJT is a huge deal because these guys need income now. They can't sit around for a 6-month training, when they don't have, income at all or any support structure whatsoever. So OJT has been a great success for a lot of our clients. So, all right. All right, I guess we're up for questions or comments. One thing I wanted to add real quick, we are using the Berkman assessment as a pilot program with Berkman International, which is kind of a more in-depth kind of look at job readiness. We're fortunate to do that, and we even bring the employers in to do the Berkman assessment, and it provides insights to validate the career decisions that a veteran might have, or to seek alternate career choices. So if you're familiar with it, it's almost like a personality test, to kind of determine the best fit with an employer or a team. It builds their personal awareness of the strengths and the motivators that might increase their success in the workplace, and also helps them assist them find a work environment that feels comfortable and challenging for them, and then we have employers take that as well to kind of match up and at least have that discussion. So it's pretty cool to have if that's an opportunity for you, or a similar assessment is good too, on top of the ONET.
And what was the name of that again, Nick?
It's called the Berkman assessment, the Berkman method.
Okay, I've heard of that. Yeah, Berkman assessment. Thank you. And Maddie, do we have any questions in the chat box? We're kind of coming up on the hour here. I want to make sure if there's any burning questions, we get to those before we kind of run out of time here.
Right. So there are a few specific questions. So I was wondering if before we take those, either of you had any things you wanted to say to round out what you said or to close out, and then I could take those, the more pointed ones.
Yeah, let's take the pointed questions. I think, I mean, we've covered a lot of ground here, so I'm curious to hear what people are asking. I mean, we could talk about some of this more generic stuff, but I think we've kind of covered that, and Nick gave us a really good overview of their process. So let's just go ahead and dive into the questions for the last, and then maybe the last minute we'll go to that very last slide that has just kind of like the outcomes that we're looking for.
So Frederick asked, what software do you use with case management? If anyone had suggestions on that.
Boy, oh boy. So this varies greatly. We're not really allowed to endorse a specific system. What I will say is in a lot of communities, there's a HMIS, Homeless Management Information System, that all the HUD-funded programs use, and some of those HMS systems have a case management function. There is a variety of case management applications and software that you can get, but I don't think I can specifically endorse one over the other. That's a great question, though. I would say try to use your HMIS and then look around and see what's peer-reviewed to be a good system. Like I said, I've seen a lot of them over the years, so I can't really say which one is best.
So a little more broad now, and if we could just try and get a quick answer, though. So getting income and getting a job is really important, getting placed in that job, but how important are those open-ended questions, getting the veteran to talk about what they really want to do and opening up the conversation so you can really listen? Somebody mentioned open-ended questions, and it just it raises the question, how important is that to the overall job placement and retention?
It's huge. We have to listen to the veterans, and open-ended questions are going to give us a lot of insight. And we have to be very careful and listen, and we also have to kind of make sure that we clarify and kind of repeat back our interpretation of what's being said. So yes, the short answer is yes. They're very important, and the key there is to make sure we're listening and make sure that we're hearing what the veteran wants to hear and what they're telling us. They may say one thing, but there may be another more subtle context. So yeah, the employment outcomes here, I mean, this is the gold standard. This is what we're looking for, particularly in HPRP. This is what shows that HPRP is a good program and it serves a good purpose. It's efficient and effective. Are the numbers, how many veterans are we getting jobs? Keeping the jobs, that's very, very key these days. That's probably the highest metric. And also, if they're working part-time, they can show that they're getting more hours, and they're also getting income gains. These are all metrics that are measured by Dole and in turn looked at by Congress when they approve the budget programs. So please keep those in mind. And I think that's it. There's our contact information. There's my email. Please feel free to shoot me email. You can call me. Use my cell, not my office number. I'll answer the phone if I'm not on a call or on training or in the air. But best way is just shoot me email. Just say, hey, I want to talk, or ask me if it's a short question. Ask it in the email, and we can either carve out some time to talk, or I'll just answer the question to the best of my ability. So please use us. We're a resource. We're here for you to support your work. So don't be shy to us. And I want to thank Maddie for producing this, and I want to thank Nick so much for giving us an awesome overview of their program over there in Houston. And I think, without further ado, we're at the top of the hour.
Thank you for closing that out so well. Everybody, the recording, the slides, access to the handouts will be in your follow-up email, and we hope you'll join us on another one of the webinars. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you to our presenters.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.